Welcome back to the show. We've got Brian back again, and he brought a friend with him, Brett Settles. Welcome to the show, Brett. We're excited about having you on, Brian. You and I have had lots of great conversations, and we're continue talking about BIM and prefab and where we're taking the industry and some of the amazing stuff you guys are doing over there at Allied BIM, and talk about some solutions you're creating. And Brett, welcome to the show also.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. I'm really happy to be here, and definitely was a fan of the first part of this episode or episodes, and happy to be here and happy to be part of Combo.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Anthony. I'm really excited to bring Brett Settles, our product owner, on board here. He's been a pivotal asset to our company just in regards to the development processes that he's putting into place. Really looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about what we do at Allied BIM. And really what the future holds for manufacturing in the electrical industry and maybe even some of the other verticals like plumbing and mechanical as well.
It blows me away. When we talked last, we really got into taking from drawings all the way through pipes that get installed, bent, ready to go, creating it. We're seeing a future where, this whole process gets created, this solution path, right? The solution path that, Brett, I think you've got a pretty good handle on the creation of it. And I really want to start, dive right into, the solution path that we're creating when we start looking at product manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen it in other industries, right? And it usually comes along when technology takes a ramp up. Communication, internets, bandwidths, all enable these certain things. And I feel like the MEP industry is doing kind of what construction and engineering have done in the past, where they're finally realizing we have a set of tools we've been using for years, but there's actually a better way. And that better way is a guided workflow, a tool that allows us to go from A to B and get the things we need done to do our job. We've seen some products do that in construction. We've seen some products do that in engineering. And, Brian had the vision that this industry is becoming mature enough to do it here. And he brought me on to help him execute.
It's kind of amazing when you look at what you guys are doing. Brian, walk through that again for the audience and some of the people that didn't hear our other episodes of the work we've done before. So let's kind of talk through what Allied BIM does and some of the cool stuff you guys put out.
Yeah, so Allied BIM is a software company that's focused on leveraging the Autodesk Construction Cloud environment. So we're focused primarily in the AEC industry, which is architecture, engineering, and construction. The main premise behind our software is automating building fabrication. So there's tools out there today. Obviously, we've all heard about the AI buzz that's going on. Part of that AI buzz is laying out automated building design, basically using AI. And then our side funnels into connecting the design model, which is converted into fabrication, into something that can be leveraged on an existing fleet of machines, whether they're hand benders, manual tools, all the way through fully automatic equipment. So in a nutshell, really what we're doing is we're taking the trades, which we're dealing with obviously trade shortages and high waste in our industry. And we're basically connecting that digital model into an environment where we can get like less skilled workers that are working on using equipment more efficiently, that allows them to learn a system or a process on a work cell. Really focused on lean manufacturing is really, really the emphasis of what we're focused on.
It's wild, the ideas of what you guys are doing. You get a drawing on one end and you kick bent pipe out on the other end, ready for install. Right. I mean, it's like literally that, that would, if you would have said it to my great grandfather, he would have looked at you like, what? It was not something they could even comprehend. It was not even, that would have been something of the gods. What some sort of magician. Right. And today, you can really start to see where we're going with this. You can really see how automated this gets. And it feels like what you guys are doing over there is you guys are really starting to create the solve for each of those, to get that to become a much faster and faster. And I love the idea of lean because, look, what do we talk about? How much, when we look at waste in our industry today, what do you think the percentage of waste of material is that we're using across the board?
Do you want me to be honest, or do you want me to lie to you?
Yeah. No, be honest.
So I'll be honest, and this offends some people, and I'm not trying to offend people. So there's some people that are really good at their job, and they can probably do 8 to 12% in terms of waste. The national average is upwards of 40% on building materials. So the way that I like to describe it to my students at Montana State University, or even to my family, if they're asking me what I do, or even friends, is that if you're driving through your neighborhood or you're driving by a construction site, take 40% of whatever the cost of that building was in materials and just throw that in a garbage can. And then they get it. They understand that. And one of the things that that can be insulting to some people. So I don't want to go that extreme, but in some cases it can be that extreme. And so really what our emphasis is, as Brett alluded to, is that we're essentially taking the design model, breaking it into a kit of parts, or packaging the materials prior to shipping. It's very much like an Amazon approach, where we're basically kitting and shipping bills of materials that are procured from vendors and suppliers out to a job site with instructions that are clear to read, easy to read. So you don't have guys sitting in a job trailer, scratching their head or rubbing their hair out like I have, trying to read a set of plans. And that helps decrease that 40% of building materials down to less than 1%. So now people can start to capitalize on that material savings on their jobs, create more work, make it easier for somebody that's less skilled to install. We did a project here on the last podcast. We kind of talked a little bit about it. Entertainment Golf Company here in Boise. We did just a bathroom stack riser. We shipped 6 assemblies, which are basically just like areas of work, up to a remote fabrication shop in Bozeman, Montana. They cut out all the materials. They shipped it the next day and had it installed in about 8 hours. That same project would have taken about 14 days, plus or minus 3, right, to install. And it was less than 2% of material waste on that entire install. It was just right in there. So those are some of the gains that we're seeing, and really, really why we're focused on what we're focused on.
It's an easy conversation to have. Look, when we look at the amount of waste, both and our business is already plagued with waste throughout, right? Even before we start these projects, the decision logic that we work on gets, pushed down to the field, and we just send all this stuff. And we go, well, you guys in the field, figure it out.
Exactly.
We've already sent it there. We've already wasted the gas, the fuel, the timing, the money, all of the stuff that, to get, that 40% of material to a job site that didn't need to be there to begin with, right? 40% of that didn't need to go there. We wasted it, because now it gets picked up from there, ends up in a landfill somewhere. And when we start to multiply that across this country, across multiple countries, project to project around the world. I mean, the biggest industry in the world produces just an unfathomable amount of waste, post-consumable waste that, look, if that's the only effort we solved by doing what we're working on, if that's the only thing that's solved, that in itself would be a game changer for our world and for our children's world and their children's world, right? If we just were altruistic and wanted to do that one little piece.
Well, I like to look at it kind of like Legos in a way. Like if I Amazon package a kit of Legos to my door, I'm going to open that up. It's got the instructions in it. Everything's bagged and color coded, and I could put that thing together in an hour or 2 hours, right? And now, obviously, in building construction, we're dealing with much larger components than Legos. But in essence, it's the same idea. And we're seeing that in the structural steel industry. A lot of the structural steel kits on these Entertainment Golf Company venues are offsite fabricated and shipped and steel erected piece by piece. But then when you get on site and you see the plumber and the mechanical and the electrical guys that are swinging hammers, climbing up and down ladders, climbing up and down stairs to get boxes of materials in and out of doorways, you see pretty amazing stuff happening on the job site. And as an educator in the space, my students are the Snapchat generation. They're the ones that are pulling out the cell phone. They want to go on an app store and find an app for that, right? And that's one thing I've got to give kudos to Autodesk for doing is, and why we're on their app store, is we have an app for that. And that's what Allied is. So
interesting to go at it. So look, at the end of the day, we want to get as automated as possible, right? Every owner wants to open faster, right? Nobody, from the time they make a decision logic to build something or do something, they want to get open faster. Everyone, we're being asked today to go faster and faster and faster. The rules and regulations of construction have gotten tougher and tougher. I mean, we were asked, way more codes today than ever before to meet, and, making sure that we meet those codes and not finding out in the field, oh, well, we just put all that stuff in, but it didn't meet code, right? That whole tolerance for, in the industry's, kind of put up with a tolerance for that, maybe a little bit, and it doesn't need to, right? We can, the decision logic, all of that decision logic needs to get pushed back upstream, right? As we talked about before, totally. There's, right, just too much being pushed down to the pipe bender,
Well, there's another, I'll lead off with this, and then Brett, I'd like you to join in on this conversation as well. But the idea here is, like, you look back to Henry Ford with the Ford Motor Company, right? They didn't build a car without plans and without materials in place to build those cars, right? That's just not the way it went down. And so the more we can kind of follow a manufactured lean approach to how we're going to construct and build these buildings, we can reduce that schedule, decrease that cost, and improve the efficiency of the build on site.
Yeah.
By far, right? And that's the part we want to go automate. Now, Brett, I think the part that I want to get in with you that's exciting. Look, you're running the plant. You're taking the drawings. You're actually producing. You're building a plant that produces prefabbed, piping for the project, right?
Yeah.
And as you're developing, and this is what, hey, folks, this is what I think people are missing as opportunity. They're like, well, AI is coming, the world's ending. Oh my God, I'll have a job. I'm like, this is something that didn't exist a couple of years ago. Right? Well, how long have you guys been in business now?
We've been in business for 6 years now, actually.
All right. So 6 years ago, were you doing the pipe bending then, or were you still just doing drawings then?
No, we started in the plumbing and mechanical space. So I started up in Bozeman, Montana, working for Bob Harvey, mechanical plumbing company, residential mom and pop shop. But what was really unique about it is we worked on high-end residential construction up in the Yellowstone Club in Montana. So those houses ranged from 4,000 to 40,000 square feet. And it was a perfect real life example of watching a plumber drive 60 miles up the canyon with a box of fittings. He'd get on site and he'd forget something at the supply house. And then he'd drive all the way back to get the next fitting. And so, that's where this all started. But where it's evolved into is the application with commercial construction, right? And even data centers or manufacturing buildings, essentially.
So you guys are solving the getting the design, getting each and every part figured out before it ever gets to the pipe bender. Right now, the plumber or the pipe bender or whatever, whoever you're bending pipe for, electricians, plumbers, any of the mechanical guys you're working with, and now that decision like gets pushed uphill. Now, as you guys are building this company that bends pipe and start to figure that out, Brett, you're actually faced with a whole bunch of other things that come up with creating a company that can spit pipe out the other end that's usable in a format that, people can get an efficient, we were talking about on pre-show a little bit of like, look, if I bend all this pipe up and it takes a guy an hour to figure out what pipe I'm going to use where, right? I just lost all my efficiencies.
Correct. Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that's a little bit different than my past software experience is the fact that we have so many pieces of information, not only pulling from the virtual side of the equation, but also pushing to the physical side and then tracking back, right? So this requires us to have partnerships with bender, machinery manufacturers, with saw companies, right? We have to, because we don't create that, but we understand that going back to the first part of our conversation, that the workflow is very important. Taking the monotonous labor out of the workflow and allowing these individuals to think about the project is really the most important thing. And Brian, I love your example, because in Montana, prefab becomes more important than it does in somewhere like New York City, where around every corner I can get a plumbing fitting. But in Montana, it's an hour drive no matter how you cut it. So I can see where that need started to arise. But that need then gets translated into what the commercial market is looking for, which is efficiency, not sending those gophers back and forth, if that term's still used. I probably shouldn't even use that term.
Well, and another standpoint to that is, like, one of our clients in New York works on skyscrapers, and it's actually a pretty similar situation. Even though the supply house is right around the corner, they're going up 27 to 115 stories or however high up they're going. And if they forget something, they've got to go back down the elevator shaft, right? They got to wait for the elevator to come, and they got to go figure it out and get back on there. And we had a group of gentlemen from one of our clients in New York that came out to our open house at CNR Electric, where they saw one of these work cells online. And what we do is we walk through the shop and we show people before they come out to our open house what these work cells look like, where we're automating inkjet marking, we're automating cutting, and we're automating bending using a CNC tube bender, Kripa bender. And what they told us when they were on site is 4 of these rolled offsets that are in a rack would take their guy that's prefabbing it already off of a sheet anywhere from a full 8-hour day to a 16-hour 2-day cycle, basically. And just for 4 pieces of material. We bent those 4 pieces in about 12 seconds per stick. It's mind-blowing. And it was because we took the model information to the machine. So the idea here is, being able to manufacture from your BIM model to alleviate the time to create more work so that you could build 15 skyscrapers instead of 1, right?
Well, and the other problem is that when you're talking about these skyscrapers in New York, I mean, I've done lots of projects in Manhattan, and I'm working on a postage stamp. I mean, it's like building on a postage stamp. Right. I don't have the spots to load, store, I need to get as efficient as possible. I don't have workspaces for every trade to do this. Having it come in and go up and go in, as quickly as possible. Those buildings today we're going way faster than ever. I mean, they're doing a floor. I mean, they're doing floor every couple of days, and some of these guys are even faster. It's amazing how fast they're going. And when you're in that small of a space, everything you can do to efficientize that whole spectrum of events that are happening, just makes a huge difference. And, we're starting to get that solution path, right? So to create that solution path. And I want to go back to that piece, because I don't think when we talk about this, I don't believe that all of us see this as an opportunity. I think a lot of us think of, all right, we're going to create this thing. It's a problem. Look, I want to build a company that can spit pipe out that goes into buildings pretty quickly. That sounds, that's an idea. It comes out of my mouth. It comes out of my brain, right? Now I've got to go solve the business need to create that. And every single one of these people that listen to us, look, our podcast listeners, they're all people who are in the business of creating a more efficient company, how to do construction more efficient. I mean, I get comments every day about, I love that idea. Let me bring that to the market, So, but I think it's a common feeling we all go through is, hey, look, we got to keep creating solutions for each part of the problem, right? That solution path you were talking about, right? It's not as, it can be frustrating, maybe even frustrating, right?
I mean, one of the reasons that I look at that solution path as the way that most all software should go is born out of frustration of working in the industry. Spending a lot of hours to develop a model that has a dead end of value, right? Like, I spend 30 hours doing this model, and then we don't have the capability to use it in this sector of the company or this sector of the company or this. And a lot of the conversations that I've had with professionals in not only construction, but fabrication and everything is like, the idea of a BIM department is almost the wrong way of thinking about it. BIM should be a piece of information that flows through the center of your project, through your company, informing everybody.
That's right. That's right. Here. Breathe into that right there. Like get that piece right there. Look, the information model, the building information model that we create, that gets created in the beginning, in that moment of its creation becomes the skeleton, the center line of all that we do. And by the way, becomes the center line of all that happens to that building forever. Right. If we really think about where this goes, right, where the, that's just the start of it today, is that we have this center line that starts at, all right, let's just solve the, construction issue. But look, as we continue down that path and that building continues to exist and we collect data and ongoing data collection about a base building, right, and where that goes, 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, the data that gets collected on that, and that gets transferred back into the model. Right, the intelligence level by which we continue to build, up until now, that's not what we do. We go, extract data about a site. right? We have send some people out. We the soil samples and dirt. We do all this data collection, and then we hand that to the engineers. The engineers do some stuff, but they do some information, correct some information, and they hand that to the architect. And the first information gets bagged, right? The data that gets collected and created rarely stays with the building. And what we really want is that model that says all data collected and used stays in the model, right?
Correct.
For the eternity of it, right? And what's beautiful about that, the beautiful idea there, right? I mean, think about the beauty in that idea that, forever, we have all the data stays with that building.
Absolutely. So a couple things about this. So I did a project that is not typical of my career back in 2007, I believe, maybe 2006 to 2007. I was working for an Autodesk reseller, Hagerman and Company to be specific, in St. Louis. And our job was to take a set of drawings at St. John's Mercy, which is one of the larger hospitals in the St. Louis area. And we needed to map an asset database to their CAD drawings. Now, with our modern technology, if you have this in the forethought of your mind, this is a literally handover. But since that was not thought of in this old process, that hospital ended up paying us a gargantuan amount of money to essentially attach SQL spreadsheets to CAD drawings, right? And that is the types of things where we're seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars spent by these companies and things that could have been prevented by forethought into the process.
Yeah. I imagine being able to go to a space in the building that has a QR code and, blockchain, we blockchain all the technology, all the information about a building into one database. Right, where we've got one source of truth about everything gets collected. Now, even it goes so far as the construction timing, schedules, deliveries, impacts, the amount of data and where this takes us. I believe that we can't see where that's going to take us. Right, I mean, I can't imagine that the people who saw the first car could ever imagine Uber. Right, I just can't imagine that. Sure. You're on a stagecoach going. All of a sudden, you could never imagine hitting this piece of plastic and all of a sudden a car would show up. You couldn't, Yeah. I feel that that's where we're at today is that creating the database and creating the one source of truth, that building information model that is a true, not just a 3D model, right? Because some people want to go, well, build model, just a BIM model, right? Great. BIM's great, but I want the entire information about the building kept with the building, right? Yeah.
So this is a passionate subject of mine because I'm going to tell you that, yes, that does sound fantastic. That does sound great. The reality is that today, like in Revit, that's not possible. Like we just can't do it. So the sad part is inside of Revit, the tool is limited to how much data we can put in. And, on the last podcast, I kind of explained the microscope and
you crushed my soul. Hold on. The last podcast, you crushed my soul. Ryan, sorry. you crushed me. I mean, I'm looking, I pray to Revit, like, oh, mighty Revit, you're going to solve all my construction needs. And you're like, it's just too heavy of a model.
And the cold, hard reality is the fact that we're using Revit to get buildings planned and permitted. That's essentially what we're using Revit for. We're creating 2D plans and we're getting them permitted. And I know that's the sad, inconvenient truth. But the reality is where it's headed and where we want to go and where we want to be is exactly what you're saying, where we've got one single location where all that information exists. We all want a singular platform. And that's what we're trying to build at Allied. That's really our initiative in terms of the fabrication of systems of what we're building. But the reality is it's requiring something like the cloud or the web, right? And the web is giving us that capability to append all this additional data into one central location. And so instead of it, there was a saying at Autodesk University just this last year, I taught a class there with Sean Fruin, who's a very good colleague, friend of mine who works for IMEG Corporation down in Texas. And he was calling it cloud central modeling, basically cloud centric modeling, essentially. So what's happening is all these building information models that we're getting planned and permitted are all being stored in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then around the Construction Cloud, we've got all these apps that are being plugged in and developed that can uniquely kind of communicate to each other. And so what we've done at Allied is we've carved out the machine manufacturing space for building construction on the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And what that's leveraging our ability to do is to tap into other systems like TestFit or Remarkable or any other types of tools that exist in the market space so that we can procure materials more efficiently, we can design buildings and actually get an automated building design for fabrication setup. So I think looking into the future, you're right, like we don't have a crystal ball of what the future is, but we have a pretty good educated guess after what we've seen over the last 20 years, or at least what I've seen over the last 20 years. Brett and I have had this conversation before. And it's pretty fascinating to see us enter that age where, now we're on Wi-Fi 6. Now we've got terabit, connections to our house. Now we've got much larger, ways to download and kind of, receive and send data. And most all of it is being geared towards, being online, being in the web, right? So I think that'll get us there.
So do you think that the problem with Revit is the structure by which they built, when we were talking last about the weight of a set of drawings, to get down to nails and nuts and bolts, it's just too weighted, to have every single detail in there. Is it the language by which they built it that causes so much weight to the drawings and plans?
Yeah, and I'm going to let Brett actually respond to this one because we've talked about it, and I really like Brett's response to this. So
So Anthony, in my career, I have spent a lot of time in Revit, but I've also spent a lot of time in Inventor with equipment, right?
Sure.
So there's a big difference in these platforms, but they need to talk together as we move into the future because they are related, and that is that Inventor was built. SolidWorks was built. Platforms, CATIA is another one. They were built to handle things down to the threads on a bolt, right? The actual geometry that drives that screw into its threads, how it works, the spacing, right? It was very much an engineering platform. Revit was always geared to take those items that were given to you encapsulated and essentially arrange them. Right?
Yeah.
Chair goes here, heater goes here, wall goes here. And as we push the limits of as practitioners, we've asked these technologies to come closer and closer together. And we're really at a point where without something new, they do not have the capability to talk. And so one of the things that like what we're doing is we're saying, what does the electrical industry need? What information do they need to fabricate on these benders? And how do we translate what Revit has into what they need? Because Revit cannot do it alone. A good example of this would be a Revit 90 that every electrician does is not what actually gets installed. There is a different radius on that pipe. And we're connecting that radius to the Revit model to give the fabricators what they need on the fabrication floor.
Yeah. So hold on. So the 90 that gets created on the radius pipe, or the fitting, or are you talking about the fitting?
Yeah. So a good example would be in Revit, you are going to take a straight part and you're going to say conduit 10 foot. Now I want a 90. Now I want another 10 foot, right? Creating two 10-inch stubs around a 90. In Revit, that's 3 parts. On the fab shop floor, that's one stick.
That's right. That's
right. And that is where a lot of us in this part of the industry are trying to find the best way to translate that, because the guys on the shop floor do not care that Revit had to do it in parts 1, 2, and 3. That doesn't make sense to them.
And that doesn't make sense to me either. I mean, when you look at it going, why can't I kick in, my real want, and this is where I'm hoping AI takes Revit, is that, up until now, that Revit family, the weight of creating and drawing and making the parts and pieces of the family were just so intense, and no one ever did it properly, right? We always kind of cheated it, right? The timing it took, so you kind of make these shortcuts that really aren't the model, the true model. It just becomes a shortcut model. do we get to a point where AI is able to say to Revit, hey, listen, you kick in 20-foot pipes on this end, I'll maximize here. In fact, I'll tell you what the pick list of maximize efficient parts are that I want to make the most efficient model. Here, look, I want 20 footers. I want 10 footers. And by the way, 3 6-footers would be great.
Yeah, and I think one way to get there, I think one way that we're going to see it eventually, transpire and fold out, or plan out, is essentially building code would be applied in the analysis of doing an automated building layout and design. And all of these procurement manufacturers like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Platt Electric, or, one of our partners is Wheatland Tube. And what's unique about Wheatland Tube is, like, if I have a model of conduit and I've mapped it through AI that it's been designed, and it's pulling in all their procurements and specifications of what their limits are based on my design model, now I can actually plug in that supplier's material directly into the model in order to procure that directly through the manufacturer more efficiently. So I think, yes, in the future we will get there. But right now, when I'm drawing it in Revit, I have to, as a BIM drafter, I have to sit there and build out every individual cataloged part and piece on my own. Other, content parties have come out and they've developed content that you can use. There's some competitors out there that are primarily driven off of Revit families. And to your point, they're built wrong. If I have to place a 300 megabit family into my project, I know my model after 1.2 gigs, at least a few years ago, crashes. Yeah. And like, that's just not sustainable. So, being able to publish it into something that's powered by the internet, that doesn't rely on computer processing, but more like cloud processing. Now I can start to get to that level of detail, and I can start to get, more accurate results. And I think that's what we're going to see kind of pan out based on what Brett said. But Brett, I really like the way you piece that together with the 10-foot stub to the 90, because that's one of the biggest problems right there. Is same thing using plumbing parts or even ductwork inside of Revit, heating and cooling loads in Revit. It's all engineered, specified, and it's not driven off of, reality. It's theoretical, right? It's not practical.
And that's what I keep telling people. Always ask me, hey, what should we be doing to prepare for AI? I'm like, look, what you should really be working on right now is manufacturers. Your entire manufacturing process needs to be digitized. And I'm saying from source materials all the way through, and that part. But also, you want to be creating Revit models. You want to be creating digital models of whatever it is you're selling, right? And I'm talking about strengths and weights, and I mean, as much digital information as you can gather and create about the products that you're making. The problem is that as AI gets smarter and it starts to do its own development design work, it won't be able to pick it won't be able to pick the product unless it has the proper digital information, or at least it won't be able to pick it and have a trustable model. Yeah, it'll have some holes in it. And the more digital information we're able to gather about the product, weights, strengths, ability, all the parts and pieces of it, then my belief is the AI model will be able to trust it more and use it faster. And that's the key, is those manufacturers that are out there creating products, you want to be the first in line to get used by AI. The bigger and better model you create, I mean, every AC unit, every sprinkler hose, every sprinkler fitting, I mean, every part of it, the more digital information I have about it, the more the AI model will trust and use it, and the faster it'll be adopted as that system comes into play. So
I'm really glad you hit on that, because one of the things when I first heard about AI, I was like, oh, here's another buzz, right? Like, here's another buzz zone that we're in. And Brett and I have actually actively been using ChatGPT quite a bit. We use it daily. And what's unique about it is your organization owns that GPT. So what you're training your monkey to do, it starts off as a monkey. I think we've all seen that kind of slide from, Microsoft, that when they announced Copilot, how it starts off as like you're training it into a human, basically. And the idea is, for those of you that haven't used AI, this is the reason I'm explaining it, is as you get in there and you start messing with it and you start telling it what you want mathematically and you start working with it and training the monkey the monkey starts to grow up and grow into this like superhuman or astronaut. Like it's pretty insane. Like, so if the manufacturers and the suppliers are plugging in all their information as a baseline, you're storing that in memory in that GPT. And now people can start to leverage that information to drive real world results. And I think that's why there's such a crave right now, especially in our industry for AI, is being able to connect our platform into something that's being continuously improved and educated upon by all of our supplier manufacturers and vendors that we work with, is only going to continuously improve our product with the information that we currently lack in existing. If we rewind like, 5 to 10 years ago, we were going, I vividly sat at my desk and went on Charlotte's website for Pipe and Foundry, and I downloaded an 800-page, spec book of fitting after fitting with every dimensional size and piece. And I had to go into Revit and build every single one of those parts using lookup tables and Excel tables. And now AI can do it for us, right? So it's like, I mean, that's really the power of what the artificial intelligence has. But it still requires.
Are you seeing that? Are you seeing AI start to do that yet? I mean, I feel like it's going to do that. Are you seeing them take those spec books? Are you seeing it take those product modules yet? Are you finding places where that's
Yes.
kicking in?
Yes. So I'm not going to slay my hand too much here, but because I'm collaborative and I am a chronic sharer, I will explain a little bit of what you can do. But take a PDF from anybody, okay?
Yep.
As long as that PDF has been OCR'd, right? As long as you ran object character recognition on the PDF and it can read that file, you can publish that into your GPT and store it in memory. And you can call upon it and use it to pull a formula. You can call upon it to use any information that you need to drive your process. And it's not perfect right now. And what I mean by that is it will mess up, but it still requires human input, right? My wife and I were sitting upstairs and it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And GPT had announced the voice chat where you could like just go on and tap a voice setting and tell it what you want. And I go, check this out. We can ask it to plan a vacation for us. And we just go in there and we're like, here's the information that we need, plan a vacation. And it did it. And I'm thinking, how can I use that on the job site? What if I'm on the job site and I'm like, hey, I need a 2-inch elbow, Wheatland, GRC, this piece. It could literally build my pick list for me if I wanted it to. So there's a lot of power with the tools that are out there as they're adding, the object character recognition. There's so many other inputs that you can do. You can give it an image and you can say, here's an image with some information. And if you define the information, it'll spit out a result and it'll learn off the image. So don't bash AI that it's going to take our jobs, because it still needs human input. It's how are you going to leverage that towards, enhancing the product or services that you deliver, right?
Brian and Brett, look, guys, I think that's why the beauty of this conversation exists. I think that we, in that gift of leveraging it, thinking through it, riding the wave of the creation of the new ideas, there's where, look, if I wanted a gift for all the listeners, my gift would be stay heads up, stay in the space of completely watching what's happening, get as present as possible into the conversation about AI, use it every day, find those tools and practices, those ways of being, because those who exploit that first will separate from those that don't so fast. The others won't be able to catch up. And I think that's the opportunity here. Guys, I'm amazed by this. And look, you and I, we've had multiple conversations. I'm going to now we've got Brett in here. We got to continue this, this conversation with, where we're going to go with this. I want to keep breaking through these ideas. Audience, I think you guys love it as much as I do. I just want to take a second before we get off of here. Where can they get a hold of you if they want to have you come in and talk to their group? If they want to have you come, get together with them or use your company to create some to work with them. What's the best way for them to catch up with you guys?
Yeah, so website and all of our emails and our contact information is on the website. And Brian, I mean, what else we got for them to get a hold of us? LinkedIn?
So
yeah,
alliedbim.com, right?
Yeah, best routes, alliedbim.com. Our phone number's on there. You can reach out through Anthony as well and his group. But
Yep.
absolutely, we're open to phone calls and communication, and we're all about. We attend a lot of conferences. So if you see us at our next conference is going to be NECA in September.
Nice.
NECA is National Electrical Contractors Association. So we'll be there right next to the Kripa booth, along with Wheatland Tube, and also Walters Wholesale is going to be there as well. So we're really looking forward to that show, and we're very approachable. We're very humble, and we can't do it by ourselves. We need a network and an audience to really collaborate with us and continue to move this industry forward. So.
That's amazing. We got, look, I love it. I'll put all that data down below. Audience, you guys know where to get that. And let's make sure we reach out to Brian and look, get him on your podcast. If you're listening, other podcasters, you guys are, get them on your podcast. Where this is going, look, it does take all of us. Look, we understand technology is not linear. There's ebbs and tides to it. If we don't continue to grow, right, we'll go back to to a technology winner, and that's not needed. Look, we know the cost of doing it the old school way, right? The old school way, maybe something you knew, or maybe all of us were fed up with. Now we're all trying to create a smarter way of going forward. It's going to take some bumps in the road. But Brett, look, I think you're hitting it. You're manufacturing pipe. Your drawings in one end, pipe out the other end, ready for install. That's a huge breakthrough in the industry. Just think about that. That breakthrough is already there. And audience members, I think you're all in that same idea and the same mindset. Look for those places where we can break through that. Guys, it's been amazing having you on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anthony.
thanks for having us, Anthony. We really appreciate it. I want to leave it on one more note. If you do what you always did, you get what you always got. So,
amen, amen, amen. I love that line, and I think that's right on. Folks, take a second and like and subscribe. Last week we had Brett, Brian and I. We had a podcast 6 days ago. 11 or 1,200 of you downloaded already, and I noticed that we've got over 35% of you that weren't subscribers out of the 1,200 of you that had already downloaded. And just take a second and like and subscribe right now if you can. It means the world to Joe and to Connor and Brett and Brian and myself. It just means the world to us when you like and subscribe. It just gives us great people like Brett and the Allied folks to come on our show. So if you could do that for me now, I would be grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.